On today's show, Alperen Sengun and Tari Eason lead the Houston Rockets as they outlast the Detroit Pistons in Motor City. Rebounding saves the day again for this team, and Jaylen Green absolutely baptizes Cade Cunningham. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Houston Texans might not have been able to take care of business against the Detroit Lions, but the Rockets certainly handled their business against the Detroit Pistons. What is up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member, also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform if you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Also subscribe to our new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. We're still trailing the Dallas Mavericks in subscriber count. I don't like that. Please help me fix that. Link in the description. So much to get to on today's episode, talking about this. This was an ugly game against the Pistons. Rockets escaping with a 101-99 win. Sengun was great. Tari was great. A lot of struggles elsewhere on the Rockets roster. We're going to unpack it all on today's episode. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being one of our incredible everydayers. Rockets escape Motor City with the 101-99 win against the Detroit Pistons. And from the jump, being completely honest, look, this game shouldn't have ever been this close to begin with. The offense from both sides in this game this was one of the ugliest games that I've ever seen. This was easily the Rockets' worst offensive performance of the season. I feel very comfortable saying that, both from just a sheer productivity standpoint, looking at the final numbers. The team shot under 41% from the floor and still managed to win this game. But also just from a process and scheme perspective, this was ugly. And there are a lot of problems with the Rockets offense, and we're going to unpack some of why it was so ugly later in the episode. But look, this was a game where the Rockets felt like they really couldn't ever get their momentum, get their mojo, whatever, against the Pistons, really until the third quarter. They hit kind of they started to kind of snowball, and things started to look really good in that third quarter. They had a 29-19, plus 10 in that third frame, and things looked good. They carried that momentum into the fourth quarter. They led by as many as 13 before the Pistons were able to mount this, comeback. They got hot from three. Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. They guys started hitting some timely shots there in the fourth quarter. And at one point, Rockets were leading by 12, and then in a blink of an eye, they were down to a 6-point lead, and then the lead gets cut even further and further and further. And it was just, it should have never been that way to begin with, right? The Rockets have got to find a way to maintain their consistency and to stop giving up these leads once they earn them, right? The Rockets tapped into something there. They finally found their mojo in the third quarter, top of the fourth quarter, and then they just completely let go of the rope, and it became this nail biter that it didn't have to be, right? Where the offense just completely dried up. Rockets could not for the life of them get anything going offensively, and then the Pistons caught fire at the right time in the fourth quarter, and thankfully the Pistons choked multiple times at the free throw line late in this game. They had chances to tie it up and force overtime. The Rockets completely escaped what honestly probably should have been a loss in this game. But the main reason for the Rockets win here, you have to credit the win to two guys in particular, and that's Alperen Sengun, who was the only consistent force of offense for the Rockets in this game, and Tari Eason, who struggled in the first half but had a monstrous second half, was tagged by Ime Udoka to close out this game, and Tari's production has just been absolutely insane so far this season. Sengun finished with 27 points on 11 of 17 shooting. He was 5 of 7 at the charity stripe to go along with 10 rebounds, 3 of them on the offensive glass. He had 2 assists, had a block mixed in there, was plus 11 in his 30 minutes. Fewer minutes than Jaylen Green, Fred VanVleet, and Dillon Brooks. More on that a little bit later. We're going to talk about Sengun's minutes in this game and some of Ime Udoka's coaching for certain, because there were some major red flags and question marks throughout this game. And then Tari Eason off the Houston Rockets bench, 18 points on 7 of 12 shooting, 2 of 4 from downtown, 9 rebounds, had an assist, had a steal, had a block, just filling up the stat sheet, doing all the little things, all the dirty work to try and win this game for the Rockets. And those two guys in particular are how the Rockets won this game, because they won through rebounding. Like, as ugly as everything was in this game, the Rockets won this game through second chance opportunities and through rebounding the basketball. They had 10 second chance points alone in that fourth and final quarter, and so many of them coming at crucial points late in the game. There's a sequence where the Rockets were down 95-94 with, a few minutes remaining in the game, and Sengun got an offensive rebound off of a Dillon Brooks missed three-pointer, and that putback made it 96-95 with the Rockets having a 1-point lead. And actually that Dillon Brooks three, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was an attempt coming off of a Tari Eason offensive rebound. So that was the third opportunity on that one offensive possession. Then, the very next possession, Tari managed to save a possession by diving out of bounds to secure the offensive rebound and throws it back in. And he just, it looks like it was going to the Pistons at first, and that would have sucked. It would have been a 5-on-4 fast break going the other direction. Instead, Dillon Brooks is right there, and he I don't know if they credited Dillon with a steal or not, but he's able to secure the ball. He rips it away from whichever Pistons player was right there trying to grab a hold of it, and he just, little power dribble and immediately goes up for a two-handed slam, makes it 98-95. Next possession, Alperen Sengun gets an offensive rebound off of a missed three-pointer by Fred VanVleet to make it 100-95. These key offensive rebounds down the stretch gave the Rockets life. It gave them breathing room. They were able to rely on their defense on the other end of the floor, and then they were able to rely on their physicality, their offensive rebounding, and the hustle in particular of Tari and Sengun to be able to generate these second and third opportunities offensively. And that's what ultimately carried them to the finish line in this game. They don't get this win without the insane production from Sengun and Tari in the first place, but in particular, their work on the offensive glass. And look, a win is still a win, right? And that should be the takeaway here is good teams find ways to win games. And as ugly as this game was, top to freaking bottom, again, Rockets shot just under 41% from the floor. They shot 20.6% from three-point land. Just ungodly numbers here. Look up and down looking up and Jabari Smith Jr., 0 of 4. Dillon Brooks, 2 of 8. Alperen Sengun didn't even attempt a 3. Fred VanVleet, 1 of 7. Jaylen Green, 1 of 6 from downtown. They couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat in this game. And at the end of the day, they still found a way to win it. All right, we still haven't seen, and look, the offense is a whole can of worms that we're going to unpack and have to talk about here in just a moment. But a lot of credit to those two guys. Sengun, who was the Pistons had no answer for Sengun throughout this game. I want to talk about him, his production a little bit here in just a second. But that's how the Rockets won this game. They won it on the glass, and they won it with their defense down the stretch. They were able to at least they were able to win the possessions that they needed to win. And they also, thankfully, there was some, a couple little choke jobs in there by the Pistons who had some opportunities. They had multiple moments and good looks late in this game. Tobias Harris had a chance to literally tie the game up at the free throw line after the Rockets failed to box out on the defensive glass, one of the final possessions of the game. Look, I literally had to take a deep breath and I let out a sigh of relief when this game was over, because it was so stressful and it didn't need to be anywhere near this level of stress against the Pistons. Look, the Pistons aren't a slouch this season. They're a much more hard-nosed defensive team. They're playing a better brand of basketball under JB Bickerstaff this season. They've, got a renewed sense of like, hey, maybe we can accomplish something this year. So it's not the same Pistons of old, but at the same time, for what the Rockets want to be, for what they're aspiring to be this season, they shouldn't have ever been in this position to begin with. But again, good teams find a way to win games even when you got nothing going for you. The Rockets manufactured a win out of basically nothing. And that's what counts. And so the Rockets do deserve credit for doing that. In particular, large amounts of credit to Sengun and Tari in particular. And then a little bit, give a small producer credit to Dillon Brooks, who played his role. He hit some timely buckets throughout the course of this game. Even if you look at the final box score, you're looking at 6 of 15 shooting. You're like, God, that was rough. But Dillon hit shots when nobody else was hitting shots, and that kind of matters in the grand scheme of things because everybody outside of Sengun and Tari was bad in this one. So coming up, want to get into some of the concerns with the Rockets' offensive production in this one. Why did Alperen Sengun only play 30 minutes? And a lot more to get to from this one. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, check out all the different odds that they have available. Check out their parlay builder. You can take a look at the different season awards bets they have available, or just the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Chiefs plus 420, the Lions right behind them at plus 500, the Ravens not far off at plus 600, and then rounding out the top five, the Bills plus 800 and the 49ers plus 1,000. So again, for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Okay, so the concerns from this game stem from a number of different things, but by and large, the biggest issue, I mean, look, Rockets held the Pistons to 99 points. Defensively, they played more than fine enough defense to win this game. The offensive scheme, the offensive execution, the lack of hierarchy offense, like there are some seriously just neon bright shining red flags with the Rockets offense so far this season. Let's start with Exhibit A. Alperen Sengun was clearly the Rockets' best player in this game. He was clearly the only source of consistent offense in this game. 27 points on 11 of 17 shooting. The Pistons really didn't have an answer for him, right? Their big man in the middle, Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart is a handful, right? He's a big, strong guy, but he's not, a 7-footer. He's not a center with a lot of length. And even against centers with length, Sengun usually finds a way to, corkscrew or, use his finesse, get up and around and whatever. He was doing a great job getting kind of what he wanted, getting to his spots. He was hitting his shots from the mid-range. He was hitting. Sengun hit the Sombor shuffle in this game. He hit him with the Jokic move. Like, we'll talk about baby Jokic. Sengun added the shuffle. It was like a modified version of his flamingo, which is, I had, one of my Nuggets guys reach out to me and he was like, yo, did Sengun just hit the Sombor shuffle? And looking back on it on a replay, I was like, holy crap, he really did, right? He hit him with that little shimmy and then hit the turnaround fade with the one leg kind of up. And he drained it a couple times in this game. So Sengun had the touch, he had it going offensively, and yet, And he was getting after it, right, on both sides of the basketball, right? He wasn't slouching defensively. He was active on the glass. Like, this was one of Sengun's best games, if not maybe possibly his best game of the season so far. And he only played 30 minutes. Like, make it make sense. I don't understand, especially with how poorly Jock Landale was playing in this game. I really don't understand what Ime Udoka was doing with Alperen Sengun the minutes. He waited until about 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter to bring Sengun back. And the only thing that I can, like, whether it's denial, copium, whatever, the only thing that I can come up with as to why he waited until there was 6 minutes left in the game is because Ime knew how physical this game was and how taxing the game was. And he didn't want to put Sengun in earlier, be it 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 9 minutes, whatever. He didn't want to come back with Sengun too soon in the fourth quarter for fear of potentially him gassing out near the finish line. That's always the risk, right? If you bring your starters back, if you bring your key guys back, your go-to guys too early in that fourth quarter, are they going to have enough gas to get you to the finish line? That to me is the only logical reasoning that I can come up with for why Sengun spent so long on the bench, and for also why Ime decided to ride with Jock Landale as long as he did. And apparently also there was, like, at least looking back on it, it looked like Jock Landale and Ime were getting into it maybe a little bit, like as Jock was coming out of the game late. So I don't know if there's something more there. I don't know if we'll find out more a little bit later on about that interaction, but for as well as he played in this game, there were so many moments late in this one where the Rockets offense just devolved into ill-advised, poor shots from Fred VanVleet, from Jaylen Green. Fred finished the night 3 of 13 shooting, only 1 of 7 from downtown. Jalen finished 6 of 17 overall, only 1 of 6 from downtown. And look, the biggest issue for this Rockets team, and we saw this very much on display against the Oklahoma City Thunder, and it's been a recurring theme throughout the early part of the season. And if you're wondering why we didn't get a recap on the OKC Thunder game, it's because the OKC Thunder just completely outclassed the Rockets, and it was a rough game, and it was a Friday night. So that's your TLDR recap of the OKC Thunder game. Look, the Rockets have struggled all season long when opposing defenses are aggressive in their pick and roll defense, specifically showing 2 to the ball when it's Fred or Jalen. That is the book on the Rockets this season. If you want to fluster and slow down the Rockets offense, all you have to do is the moment they run pick and roll, you send 2 to the ball, whether it's Fred or Jalen with the ball in their hands, and those 2 guys have not done a good enough job so far this season getting rid of the basketball quickly enough to the release valve, whether it's Alperen Sengun on the short roll, whether it's Amin Thompson, whoever the screener is, right? They're not doing a good enough job releasing the ball, and it's completely stagnating the Houston Rockets offense. They are taking first off, they're walking the ball up with very little urgency, at least in particular in this game, right? They're walking the ball up with very little urgency. They're taking too long to get into their sets. I mean, a lot of the shots Sengun made in this game were like grenades, where he had, a couple seconds left on the shot clock, and he was given the ball with 4 or 5 seconds left in the middle of the floor and had to, pull a bunny out of his hat, make something out of nothing, and just throws up a prayer at the basket. And he made a couple of them that way. But that's not good offense. Like, the offense has been so just abhorrently bad. There we go. I want to make sure I say my words right. And it's got to improve. And some of that is just like basic decision making from guys like Fred and Jalen, but a lot of it also falls on Ime. Like, there's very little creativity within this Houston Rockets offense, and it is going to continue. It is going to be the death knell of this team. Like, if the Rockets don't have success this season, if they struggle to, make it to the play-in tournament, or if they struggle once they get there, whatever, like, offense will ultimately be the Achilles heel of this Rockets team. Some of that just comes down to shooting, right? Like, this game would have looked a lot different if the Rockets shot even a semi-respectable percentage from three-point land, but that doesn't absolve them of the issues that we see on display consistently throughout a game, right? Where, again, you put pressure on the primary ball handler out of the pick and roll, and the Rockets just completely disintegrate. Whether it's Fred, whether it's Jalen. Fred, largely because he doesn't have the size to get the ball over the top at times when you have 2 bigger, lengthy defenders that are kind of draped all over him, whether it's a big and his primary defense, whatever. And then for Jalen, some of it's decision making at times, but it's also a size component. Like, it's just like, go back and rewatch the game. There are so many times where the Pistons show 2 to the ball and Fred or Jalen, they're not able to get rid of the ball quick enough. And then the big recovers, or they fully switch. They send the other defender away, and then it goes back to being man-to-man, and then the Rockets have just wasted 10 to 12 seconds on the shot clock before they're able to get another action going. Like, it's really tough to watch. And then you add on top of that the fact that you had a game in which you did have an answer. You had a guy in this game that clearly had it going in Alperen Sengun. And yet, down the line of this game, there were, I don't know how many different possessions in the closing moments of this game, down the stretch, final 4 minutes, 5 minutes, the crunch time of this game, right? Where the Rockets just refused to give Alperen Sengun the ball and let him go to work. It makes very little sense. And all of that all falls on Ime, right? He's the guy that needs to set the pecking order. He's the guy that needs to establish the offensive hierarchy. And look, it's okay if it changes game to game. It's okay if one game Jaylen Green is the best guy on the court, let him be the guy that you ride to the finish line. It's okay if one game it's Alpi. It's okay if one game it's Fred or Dillon or Jabari, whatever. That's fine. But in a given game, the Rockets have been awful this season about recognizing who the hot hand is and letting that person continue to go to work when they've got it going. Sengun had it going in this game. There was no reason for him to play as few as 30 minutes, again, unless there was some extra reasoning from Ime Udoka from, a conditioning standpoint or a physicality standpoint, whatever. Again, it wasn't a defensive thing because he had Jock Landale out there, and Jock Landale was getting cooked. Like, Jock Landale was absolutely struggling in this game. So it definitely wasn't a defensive issue in this game. And then again, offensively, he was the only source of consistent offensive production. So I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering where some of the decision-making is. Ime needs to do better. Like, the offense for this Rockets team needs to be better. There needs to be some creativity added to it. There needs to be something other than just high pick and roll and dribble handoffs on the perimeter. And he's got to find a way, even if it's just as simple as just letting Sengun and Jalen get back to the 2-man game a little bit more often, because at least that works. And that's a little bit more of a bread and butter play that we should see the Rockets spamming way more often than they actually do. So I've gotten up on my soapbox here for a lot in this segment. I've highlighted a lot of the frustrations and the issues within the Houston Rockets offense, which is, again, compounded by the fact that nobody up and down the roster can shoot the ball, apparently. But things have to change. Like, Ime is going to have to figure something out. And one of the potential changes here, we're going to have to talk about this, and this is going to become a consistent thing that we have to discuss, is the way that Tari Eason is currently outshining Jabari Smith Jr. Tari Eason needs to start like yesterday for this team. They are going to be leaving wins on the table this season if Tari Eason is not starting sooner rather than later. Want to talk about that. Want to talk about final thoughts from this game. Got to talk about the Jalen Green poster on Cade Cunningham. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, Game Time is the best way to get tickets for sports, theater, comedy events, whatever, concerts, whatever you're looking to get your hands on. Game Time is your number one ticket marketplace. Look, there are a bunch of Rockets home games coming up here. They've got a slate of back-to-back home games against the Los Angeles Clippers. James Harden coming back to town. Kevin Porter Jr. coming back to town. Should be a pair of fun games. Go ahead on over to Game Time and get yourself some tickets to those games. They've got so many great features that make it the best ticket buying experience on the market right now. They've got their Game Time picks, filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats. They've also got their seat view, so you know exactly what to expect when you get to the venue, their lowest price guarantee, ticket coverage. They're all-in pricing. That's my personal favorite. They're fully transparent from start to finish. When you toggle on their all-in pricing feature, just download the app, toggle it on, and they will be fully transparent with you from start to finish during your ticket buying experience. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's talk a little bit about Tari Eason in this game, because my goodness, Tari, aside from two very much kind of shacked in a fool moments, Tari was absolutely sensational in this one. Again, this win does not happen without the production that the Rockets got from Sengun in the starting lineup and Tari Eason coming off the Rockets bench. Tari also blessed us with a couple new sound bites on the soundboard, one of which was talking about the play at the end of the game where Tari Eason blocked a three-pointer from Jaden Ivey. And unfortunately, or I apologize, it wasn't Jaden Ivey, it was Cade Cunningham three-pointer. So Tari was guarding Cade on the perimeter, blocked the three-pointer, but the Rockets failed to recover the loose ball, and Tobias Harris was able to drain a three-pointer, his only three of the game, to make it 198. And when asked about the defensive intensity by Rockets courtside reporter Vanessa Richardson at the end of the game, Tari Eason had this much to say. Where is it? There it is.
We got to grab that ball, to be honest with you. That's what I want. We got to grab that ball, but...
Tari Eason with his live TV moment. Look, there was clearly some frustration there in that moment. And the guy closest to be able to secure that ball was none other, unfortunately, than Jabari Smith Jr., who, again, did not have the best of games. Again, it's just, I don't know what's going on with Jabari, but at this point, he has been the weakest link in the Rockets starting lineup, and he's still defending, he's still trying to do what he can do, but as the Rockets season progresses, I don't know what we're going to see with how Ime Udoka decides to handle this dynamic between the two. We're now 10 games into the season, and it is readily apparent that Tari Eason is ready for a much bigger role. We're seeing him get opportunities to close out the halves. We're seeing him close out games over Jabari Smith Jr. At this point, it feels like only a matter of time before a switch is ultimately made. I can see both sides of the argument, though, because, if you pull Jabari and you bring him to the bench, maybe it destroys whatever little confidence he has left. Maybe he really is just in a shooting slump and he'll break out of it sooner rather than later. And if Jabari was hitting, 38% of his threes right now instead of sub 30%, which I'm sure he's at after this game, then it's a completely different conversation, right? And he's doing everything he's supposed to be doing, and he's great, and he's a, integral part of the Rockets' success, but it hasn't been that way so far. And as long as Tari keeps having these performances, then there's going to continue to be games where Jabari Smith Jr.'s minutes just continue to get squeezed down. And maybe that's all that matters. And at the end of the day is, it doesn't matter who starts, it matters who finishes. And I hear that argument thrown around a lot, but at the same time, who you start leads to how you start games, right? And the Rockets have started these games really rough. And there have been a lot of points where they've been able to rely on the production from guys like Sengun, like Jalen, but it hasn't been easy. This Rockets team, it's like pulling teeth sometimes for them to get anything going offensively, because they're generating good looks at times, but nothing's going down. They just don't have the shooting on the roster. And if Jabari continues to struggle, it feels like almost basketball malpractice to just let him continue firing away in the starting lineup if he's going to continue to shoot as poorly as he's been shooting. So Tari Eason absolutely playing out of his mind. Great defensive presence in this game, great effort on the glass, the switchability all up and down the Pistons lineup, being able to guard Cade, being able to guard Jaden Ivey. Even at the end of the game, literally one of the final possessions of the game, Tari Eason forced Jaden Ivey into this super awkward pass that led to a turnover and led to Fred VanVleet getting the steal. Cade drove in and dished to the right side corner, and Tari Eason closed out so hard on Jaden Ivey, and Ivey tried to sidestep him to then get the three-pointer up because it was still 198 at this point. And Tari was able to recover from the hard closeout and force Jaden Ivey to pass the ball out of the sidestep three that he was attempting to shoot, which led to an awkward pass that got kind of, tipped towards out of bounds. And then whichever Pistons player, I think it probably was Cade, tried to throw it back inbounds, and it went right into Fred VanVleet's hands. So a lot of the hustle, a lot of the defensive plays that Tari was able to make in this game just like at one point just outright like stealing the ball and going the other way with it in transition. Like Tari just does so many good things on the floor. And I don't think I mentioned it in segment 1, but it's also really late as I'm recording this, so I apologize if I'm reiterating something here. But as it stands right now, at least coming into this game, the numbers haven't been updated after the Rockets win against the Pistons, but coming into this game, Tari Eason was ranked 4th in the NBA in box plus minus, which is one of the best stats for kind of calculating your player's sheer overall impact in the game. And the only 3 players ahead of Tari Eason are Nikola Jokic, number 1, Jason Tatum was number 2, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was number 3. Literally 3 MVP level players are the only players in the NBA ahead of Tari Eason in box plus minus. That is how effective he's been this season for the Houston Rockets. So at some point, you just got to put your best players on the court. At some point, you just got to put your best 5 on the floor and give them as many minutes as humanly possible to be able to win these basketball games. So that's where it stands. That's where I'm at on the Tari Eason front. I feel like it's only a matter of time before Ime is almost forced to make a switch if Jabari can't turn it around soon. And I also hear the argument. I'll address this one thing before we get to a couple other final thoughts here, but I also hear the argument that, okay, maybe Tari Eason is better served coming off the bench, right? Maybe his energy, the way that he impacts the game, that the Rockets almost in a way need that energy, that spark off the bench to be able to turn the tide of a given game. I understand that a little bit, and there are definitely certain players that fit that mold where their energy is too invaluable or it doesn't, the energy doesn't work the same way if you put them in the starting lineup as opposed to having them coming off the bench midway through the game and completely changing the direction of the game, letting them impact it in a variety of ways, whatever. I don't think Tari fits that mold. I think Tari makes it work with whoever he's on the court with. And it doesn't matter because he's not a guy that needs plays called. He literally manufactures something out of nothing more often than not when he's on the floor. And he's done a great job just knocking down his spot up threes when they've been given to him. He hasn't been nearly as tunnel visioned this season. There have been a couple moments here and there. And again, aside from the 2 little Shackton moments in this game where the first one came where he was on a fast break and he tried to lob the ball up to, I want to say it was a Min Thompson at the rim, but I could be mistaken here. There was somebody under the rim. The Rockets had a 2-on-1 fast break, and Tari tried to lob it up. It looked like he was caught between wanting to shoot the basketball or do a lob, and it just completely ricocheted off the rim, and the Rockets got nothing out of that possession. And then there was another one on a 3-on-1 fast break where Fred dished it at the last second to Jabari. He had Jalen on one wing, Fred dished it to Tari at the last second. He had Jalen on the left wing. He had Tari on the right wing. And he dished it to Tari, and Tari went up for the dunk and missed a point-blank dunk. That was a little rough. Like Tari's not beating the no bounce allegations after that play right there, but he went on to have such an impressive rest of his third quarter and such a strong fourth quarter, helping the Rockets secure this win that we're gonna forgive him for that one. Look, man, Tari Eason is one of the most impactful players on this Rockets roster. At some point, you just got to play your 5 best players. Tari Eason is clearly one of the 5 best players for this Houston Rockets team. And the longer that he keeps coming off the bench, the longer that he's not playing 30, 35 plus minutes a night, the Rockets are going to regret not making that move sooner rather than later. Elsewhere in this game, Jaylen Green. Look, it was a rough night for Jaylen Green. He 15 points, 6 of 17 shooting, only 1 of 6 from downtown. He had 5 rebounds, he had 3 assists, he had 2 steals, he had a block in there. Like he was finding ways to contribute despite the offense not being there in this game. But man, oh man, was that dunk on Cade Cunningham absolutely ridiculous. Just baptized him on the Lord's Day, no less, on a Sunday, put him on a poster, just detonated on him. And you could see it. I mean, there's a little, Jalen plays with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder going up against Cade and going up against the Pistons. Jalen and Cade have gone head to head 3 times now, Rockets versus Pistons. And in 2 of those 3 matchups, Jalen has dunked on Cade Cunningham and like yelled in his face afterwards. Picked up the technical foul for doing it. Look, that dunk was unbelievable. I like got up out my chair when it happened. It was so insane to see him look, and it was all created by an Amin Thompson steal, mind you, right? So shout out to Amin Thompson for creating this epic moment for the Rockets and for Jaylen Green. Amin Thompson gets the steal. Jalen comes streaking down the court. Amin, dishes it over to Jalen, and then I also look. I'm gonna give a little bit of credit to Cade Cunningham, right? Sometimes guys make the business decision, get out of the way of the post or whatever. I will never fault a guy for trying to contest a dunk. Like, that's kudos to Cade for trying to get in the way and trying to stop Jalen, but Cade didn't he tried to get out of there, tried to leave the decision at like the 10th or the 11th hour, and it was too little too late, and Jalen just I mean, man, Tari Eason's reaction to the dunk was incredible too post-game.
That was ridiculous. On his head top, on his nuggets. That's a coffin.
That's a coffin, man. Tari is always good for a good quote or two, and now I've got a couple more pieces added to the Rockets soundboard. But look, Rockets come away with this win against the Pistons. They've got some serious question marks to figure out offensively for this team. And now that the Rockets are 10 games into the season, like that is a significant enough sample size, a 10-game sample size, to be able to start making some hard decisions. Maybe Ime Udoka waits until 15 games, 20 games, 25 games in before he tries anything drastic like shaking up the starting lineup. But the numbers are there, and it's readily apparent via the eye test, via advanced stats, whatever, that something's got to give with the Rockets starting lineup. It's not working, and it shouldn't be this tough. With all the talent that the Rockets have up and down this roster, the offense should not look as bad as it has through 10 games so far this season, and it should never look as bad as it did in this game against the Pistons. Right? You can't even chalk this up to, they just had a bad shooting, right? Even the process looked bad, and that's the concerning part here. So how will the Rockets address these issues going forward? How will Ime Udoka try to change things up? Hopefully, he's got the answers. That's why he's paid the big bucks. Around the corner, the Rockets are dealing with the Wizards at home. They've got a little homestand starting up here. So that should be an easy win, but based on how this Pistons game went, I don't know if we can chalk that up to being an easy win. But I want all your thoughts from what we talked about in today's episode. How are you feeling about this Rockets team 10 games in, sitting at 6-4 right now? Give me all your thoughts in the YouTube comments. But as always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Be sure to remember the best way you can help us grow, right? I'm all twisted up at the end of the episode. Listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us your comments while you're there. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.